Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you joining from wherever you are joining in the world. It's a pleasure to have you be with us today. This is our second annual Global Family School and Community Engagement Symposium. I am Rebecca Winthrop. I am the director of the Center for Universal Education here at Brookings. It's my real honor and pleasure to be able to kick off today's symposium. And before I introduce the substance of what we're going to be doing, just a quick reminder for all of you that this will be a multilingual panel. This initial panel will be multilingual. So for all you English speakers, please go to the bottom of your screen and click the globe icon and make sure to join the English room, and that way you'll be able to follow no problem. You also can turn on closed captionings using the little CC icon at the bottom of the screen. And we are going to be taking questions from all of you. Some of you have already submitted questions, but we're going to be taking audience questions. So you can email events@brookings.edu, or with the hashtag Family School Partners, you can submit a question at X or Blue Sky. So with that, we're going to dive in. The topic of this symposium is championing family-centered education systems. What are those, you may ask? Well, we will tell you. It's something we've been working on with our colleagues around the world, and are really excited to dive in. We chose this week to have this symposium because it is International Education Week and it is Family Engagement and Education Month. And this symposium is going to be a two-day affair. Online, we're going to kick off with this opening panel, and then we're going to have three interactive workshops that have been co-organized, and we've been collaborating with our colleagues from Bangladesh, Brazil, Colombia, Sierra Leone, South Africa, and Zanzibar, Tanzania. So an incredible perspective from around the globe. As many of you know, we have been doing quite a bit of work over the years here at the Center for Universal Education on education systems transformation, this idea of moving from marginal incremental improvements to really shifting the norms sustainably of how education systems work so that they're adaptable, they're responsive, and that every young person, regardless of their background or where they were born, can develop the skills they need to thrive. So that is something we've been heavily working on across all of our colleagues at the center. And we know in that effort, often families and communities are left out of this dialogue, this discussion, and certainly implementation around large-scale education system transformation reforms. And so part of what we've been doing that we're going to share with you during this symposium with our collaborative partners is every partner has been leading research in their communities, trying to elevate the voices of families and students and educators, and trying to study and test different levers of change that aim to make sure families are partnering with schools to really advance this type of transformation and advance student learning and development. So that is what we're all gathered here to learn and share about. And without further ado, I want to introduce my two colleagues who are really leading this work inside CUE, who will be kicking off and leading you through this first panel. Emily Markovich Morris, who is the leading fellow on the Family School and Community Engagement and Education Initiative. Please come to the screen. Welcome, Emily. And Richa Hosla, who is our senior research analyst, both of whom have been leading all of this work. And I will hand it over to them. Take it away, you guys. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, for setting the stage, and thank you to all of you who have joined today. Rich and I will be sharing what we've been learning in our Global Research Collaborative on Family Engagement. And last year, we shared the 6 global lessons, which were lessons learned with families in schools and students from across 16 countries. This year, our findings are rooted in 7 country studies where we analyze education policy frameworks alongside perspectives from parents, caregivers, educators, and students. And we were looking at both the challenges and the opportunities for building stronger partnerships within education systems. So together as a collaborative, we've been using the research to guide us in designing and testing one bold action, which Rebecca mentioned, we are calling our levers of change. So we'll share with you a little bit now what we have been finding, and then you will hear from our esteemed panel they'll share more about their experiences with family-centered education systems. What do we mean by family-centered education systems? We have been digging in and defining this together as a collaborative, and we find that centering families really is building a shared vision of education that considers not only the purpose of education, but also the practices, the teaching and the learning in education systems and the different parts of the systems, as well as the people and the power dynamics. We have been elevating the voices of families, students, and educators within education systems transformation. We've been building and fostering trust between families and schools and educators and students within systems. And we have been working towards a common goal of promoting student learning, development, and well-being. So this is what we mean by family-centered education systems. Our journey and goals of the Family, School, and Community Engagement and Education Initiative are there 3 key goals. One is to develop collaborative tools and research, which you'll be hearing about for the next 2 days. And we're facilitating global dialogues within education systems and across countries and education systems around the world. And finally, we're catalyzing levers of change that foster family-centered education systems. Our journey started back in 2018 when we established the Family Engagement and Education Network and the initial research, the playbook research, as we call it. And these last 2 years, 2022 to 2024, we really dug into 16 country studies and building conversations and studying with families, educators, and students, education systems transformation and bringing families in. And this last year, we have been really digging into 7 case studies in 7 countries and looking at policies and how do we institute levers of change to really change one part of the system to be more family-centered. And then going forward, we'll share at the end of the panel that we're starting a new phase of research where we're really digging into relational trust within systems and looking at factors such as AI and how that impacts relationships within education systems. Our Family Engagement and Education Network is now over 62 organizations and institutions from 22 countries, including 6 US states and growing. And this collaborative is what drives our research as well as drives our levers of change. And the indicated spots on this map are where the 7 countries are that we have been digging deeply into looking at how do we center education systems to be more family-centered. The 7 countries that we've been featuring and working with very closely in this education system transformation is Bangladesh, Brazil, Colombia, Kazakhstan, Sierra Leone, South Africa, and Zanzibar, Tanzania. And we've also been looking at how to center youth voice and education systems transformation. And we've been looking at across all of these countries and what it means and how do we center youth in education systems transformation. Our approach that we've been following, we call it the data dialogues and directions, where we collect survey data and have conversations with families and students and educators. We get together with the data, talk about it, think about how we can build greater shared visions for education, and we think of a direction. Also the strategies, the levers of change that we can take from the learnings and the research to create stronger partnerships. So we call that the data dialogue and directions approach. Our approach also is elevating and celebrating what is already happening. So we study and look at together the different forms of family involvement and engagement. That includes the work that families do at home in caregiving and learning at home and supporting learning. It also includes communicating with schools and school staff, as well as volunteering time and resources in schools, participating in decision-making and leadership, as well as building community within communities and between schools and communities. We have been also identifying barriers to meaningful family school partnerships, some of these barriers being more structural, school and society facing, some of them more situational of families in the home. Been identifying these barriers and thinking about together, how do we break these barriers to create more meaningful and inclusive partnerships? We've also been measuring engaging relational trust in schools. So we've been co-developing a relational trust scale and testing this out to understand the different elements of trust between families and educators, educators and families, students and educators, so we can identify where to lean into to build trust and what strategies we can use to build greater trust between families and schools. And finally, developing a shared vision of family partnerships that are responsive to education levels and contexts. And you will hear over the next 2 days teams that are working at the early childhood development level, working in primary schools, working at secondary schools. And we know from the research that family engagement does shift over a child's lifetime. And so we've been also creating strategies and shared vision that are responsive to these different age and education levels of children. And how do we think about and build a shared vision of family partnerships that's responsive to the context and the level of education?
Through this collaborative research, many findings and insights have emerged. We found that across contexts and geographies, schools and educators rarely receive education, training, or support on family engagement. First, we need to equip schools and educators to partner meaningfully and inclusively with families. We have developed open courses or MOOCs to support teachers and educators and education leaders on planning and implementing family engagement strategies in India and Brazil. Our colleagues in Brazil and Colombia are convening communities of practice for educators and family leaders. You can learn more about their work at their workshop today at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. We're also sharing innovative practices from around the world through our strategy finder, which can be found on our website. We also learned that schools often lack means and mechanisms to consult and collaborate with all families. So we need to elevate family voice in school planning and decision making. Our colleagues in Bangladesh are leveraging the Global Family School Community Engagement Rubrics tool to facilitate participatory school planning with families. Through this process, educators, families, and students come together to design strategies to make schools more inclusive. You can learn more about this at their workshop with our colleagues from Zanzibar tomorrow at 8 a.m. Eastern. Finally, we're also identifying and elevating family champions in schools and communities. We also learned that we need to build engagement in ways that are responsive to the lived experiences of families and students by promoting two-way communication and building relational trust in the school community. Our colleagues in Sierra Leone and South Africa are developing strategies and activities that create opportunities for families, students, and educators to listen to one another, build empathy, and develop strategies that consider the needs and aspirations of the school community. You can learn more about their work at their workshop tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern. We invite you to learn more about our collective work of our community. Our tools that we've co-developed with our research collaborative include the Conversation Starter tools, the Global Rubrics, and the Strategy Finder, all of which support schools and communities to develop responsive and inclusive family engagement approaches. Our research share lessons that we've learned over 5 years. We invite you to scan the QR code to learn more about our upcoming policy research that we're launching today. Although our website is down today, we hope that you'll be able to access these resources as we share them in our follow-up email as well. Our work is really about centering families in education systems transformation and making sure that they are key partners along with educators in ensuring students thrive and schools succeed. This ethos was captured by an educator in Kazakhstan who said, "We as educators forget that families know and care the best about their children, and we have to build a strong connection with families. Only when teachers work closely with families will students achieve more in life. Without partnerships, the student is situated in the river with family on one side and the school on the other. We need to build a bridge to help students navigate through the river with both family and school." You will hear from leaders in our collaborative on what it takes to champion family-centered education systems over the next 2 days and how they are building these bridges between families and schools.
I'm excited now to welcome the champions and the real experts in this work. So we are honored to have representatives from 4 of the 7 countries share with us today on this panel what family-centered education systems means in their contexts and how they're using research and recommendations as levers of change to bring families into education systems transformation. So I'm honored to introduce the panel now. So panel, please turn on your cameras and join us. We have CEO, Chief Education Officer of the Ministry of Basic and Senior Secondary Education, Mr. Edward Pakra. CEO Pakra is a distinguished educator and administrator who has served as the principal of the Bow Government Secondary School in Sierra Leone. He has also extensive leadership experience in education, having held leadership roles in Sierra Leone, Gambia, England, and Saudi Arabia. CEO Pakra has presented influential papers at ECWAS in Burkina Faso and Guinea and has earned recognition for his expertise and dedication. In his current role as the Chief Education Officer, he actively engages in community initiatives honoring individuals who contribute to education in Sierra Leone. So welcome, CEO Pakra. We also have Analicia Sacheri, is the Executive Director of Nova Escola in Brazil. She is a journalist and an educator specialized in active learning and for an innovative education. She has over 20 years of experience in the Brazilian social sector. Nova Escola is a nonprofit organization focused on supporting public school teachers. It has a digital platform of over 1.5 million visitors, and its community, Conectando Saberes, is spread all over Brazil. Analicia is one of the leaders of its digital transformation from a printed magazine to AI solutions that now helps teachers to plan the lessons using WhatsApp. So welcome, Analicia. We also have Mahmoud Morshed, an associate professor in Ministry of Education for the government of Bangladesh, the Eden Mohila College, where he combines his passion for education and research to empower the next generation of educators and researchers. Mahmoud also serves as the program and research advisor for the Education and Cultural Society, where he leads social and educational research with communities across Bangladesh. He's also pursuing his PhD in botanical sciences. So welcome, Mahmoud. And finally, we have Ms. Carolina Piñeros, the executive director and the founder of Red Papa Colombia, which is a civil society network of mothers, fathers, caregivers, and allies who advocate for the protection and the rights of children and adolescents, and has achieved progress in important legislation and evidence-based programming. She also serves on the boards of several social initiatives supporting vulnerable children. She holds a degree in industrial engineering with a specialization in personal and family development and is the proud mother of 3. So welcome, Carolina. And now I'm going to start with handing to Mahmoud to talk a little bit about the education system in Bangladesh, and then we will hear from each of the panelists, giving us a little bit of overview to your education system. So Mahmoud, I'm going to hand the microphone to you.
Thank you. Let me begin by briefly setting the context of our education system. Bangladesh today has a population of about 171 million, with more than 1/3 under the age of 18. We have one of the largest school-age population globally, about 16 to 17 million children in primary and roughly 9 to 15 million in secondary and post-primary, depending on different data sources. Importantly, only about 7% of secondary students attend public schools, with the vast majority enrolled in private institutions. Despite high enrollment, challenges persist. Completion rates drop sharply as children move up the system. At lower secondary, completion is relatively high, 85% for girls and 66% for boys. But at upper secondary, completion falls dramatically to 27% for girls and 32% for boys. And rates are significantly lower in rural areas. These patterns reflect broader risks, high educational costs, pressure on adolescents to leave schools for work, and early marriage, which remains a major barrier for girls. More recent data also show that nearly 40% of young people aged 15 to 24 are out of education, work, or training. There are also structural features that shape the system. Private school account for almost 94% of all secondary institutions, and gender parity remains strong at the primary level, with girls representing about 51% of enrollment. And finally, in terms of investment, education receives about 12% of the national budget, roughly 2% of GDP, and public spending is low by global standard, around Taka 27,000 per student per year, or just over $2,000 US dollars. So this combination of scale, low completion, inequity, and underinvestment highlights why rethinking how families and communities engage with schools is so important for us for going forward. Over to you, Emily.
Thank you, Mahmoud. And just elevating what Mahmoud said about the education system for secondary school being 96% provided by private schooling. So that has been a deep challenge that Mahmoud and colleagues have been looking into across. And so thank you so much, Mahmoud, for elevating that. I'm going to hand to Analisia now to talk a little bit about Brazil and the education system.
Hello, first, thank you. It's great to be here with you all. Well, Brazil's school system has 47 million students and 2.2 million teachers, and 8% of the students are in public schools. These public schools are free and they are run by the government. The Ministry of Education, that is our federal level, sets the rules, the national standards, and we had new national standards approved in 2017, but the states and the cities are responsible for most of the schools. So they can adapt the content, adapt the standards, but always following the federal rules. We face a learning crisis here in Brazil. We are always among the worst countries in external evaluations like PISA, and we have only 4.5% of the kids leaving school what they should know in math, what represents the size of the problem that we have here in our country. Thank you.
Thanks, Analisia, and just elevating the 80% of children in public schools and the challenge that Nova Escola has been working with education quality and access. So thank you so much, Analisia. Carolina, handing to you now in Colombia.
Muchas gracias a Brookings por la invitación. Un saludo a los panelistas y a todos los que nos acompañan hoy.
Thank you so much for your invitation. Colombia has a population of about 50 million inhabitants, 50% informality rates, 2.8 million migrant people in Venezuela, and historically over 8.6 million people displaced because of the armed conflict. In this context, our educational system is structured in different levels: preschool, basic, primary, middle school or secondary school, and higher education. Basic, mandatory, is primary, secondary, regulated by the Ministry of Education. And the school day is 4 bimesters and 40 weeks a year. 20% of the students have a full day at school, and 80% only in the morning or in the afternoon, which is half day. And the registration has increased over the past few decades, but there are important challenges according to equality between cities and the rural areas. And 70% of the kids go to public schools, and we have 23 students per teacher in basic school and 27 students per teacher in middle school. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolina, and just also recognizing what Carolina mentioned about the large displaced community, as well as internally and externally, and the challenges with the education system of ensuring that all children have access and partnering with families. So thank you, Carolina. And I'm going to hand now to the Chief Education Officer of Sierra Leone, Mr. Pakra, to share a little bit about the context in Sierra Leone.
Thank you very much. And good afternoon or good morning, everyone. Quickly, with the context in Sierra Leone, with the student population for primary and secondary schools, we have about 3.5 million. To be exact, it's 3,450,104. And then we have about 38,000 teachers in our schools. And looking at the enrollment in primary school, pre-primary school, we have 188,371. And in primary school, we have about 2,071,892. And then in junior school, we have about 681,129. Then in senior secondary school, a total of about 509,712. So in total, that brings us to about 3.5 million pupils. Out of school rates is not too great. In primary school, we have about 18%, and junior secondary school, 19%, senior secondary, 36%. With school completion rates, we have in junior school 44 to 56% completion rate, and senior secondary school 22 to 23%. All this is put into context due to the poverty rate. That's why we introduced the free quality education, which gives every child an opportunity to education, and we introduced the radical inclusion policies, which also gives every child an opportunity. With performance in exam pass rates at NPSE, which is our National Primary School Leaving Certificate exams, we have about 78%. And for the basic education certificate exam, which is 3 years of secondary school, that is a junior secondary school, we have 96%, which is the highest on record so far. Then in the WASC, which is the West African Senior Secondary Certificate exam, which is completion of senior secondary school, we have 83% completion rate. But when you look at performance, boys generally outperform girls at the primary school level, but at secondary school, the girls outperform the boys. So in actual fact, our government actually spends up to 2023, our government was spending 23% of our annual budget on education since 2018 to 2023. But lately, it's now been reduced to 20%. So looking at the drop.
I think we may have lost the CEO. So I will just elevate with this.
We lost connection at that point, but I think I was just at the verge of completing. So as I was saying, the last thing I was talking about was the reasons why there is a girls' dropout rate was due to pregnancy, early pregnancy, and early child marriage. So I'll pause there for now, and then we continue.
Thank you so much, CEO. And just to elevate that 60% of the population in Sierra Leone is under the age of 18, and the challenge of the 18 to 19 percentage of young people out of school, and that the ministry is trying to support with partnerships to ensure children are in school. So thank you for sharing that, each of you. And now I'm going to ask each of you to share a little bit about how family, school, and community engagement is situated in your current education system and your policies. And we will start again with Mahmoud talking about Bangladesh. When you're on mute, if you could unmute.
Sorry. Well, in Bangladesh, family engagement is widely recognized as important, but in practice, it is narrowly defined in policy. As the policy brief highlights, national frameworks across primary and secondary levels largely limit family roles, to participation in school management committees, that is SMCs, where parents make up to one-third members. However, these committees often lack clear guidance, and many are chaired by political appointees previously, and parent voices, especially mothers, are not always influential here. Beyond the SMCs, our policies offer little detail on meaningful partnership with families. For example, the secondary curriculum does not outline any role for families in supporting learning at home or understanding what is taught in school. And secondary schools are not required to develop school plans that consult families or include their perspectives. Yet, when we look at actual practices, families are already deeply involved, mostly through communication with teachers, monitoring children's progress, and supporting learning at home. In the research, we found 66% of families followed school news and nearly half supported learning at home. So despite financial constraints and low literacy in many communities, unfortunately, these everyday forms of engagement are not acknowledged in policy. So overall, Bangladesh policy vision remains limited and somewhat outdated, while families are engaging in diverse ways that the system has yet to recognize, facilitate, and support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mamoon, for sharing a little bit about the education system and how it situates families, and how the work that you're doing. You'll share in a minute about how you're trying to support with the policy and implementation of to have families more partnering with the Ministry of Education and with schools. Handing now to Analísia to share in Brazil.
Hi, thank you. Well, here in Brazil, there is a general recognition that families and communities should be engaged with schools, and there are some federal recommendations for that, but each school can decide what to do, and we have very different situations happening all across the country. Usually we see, as I believe that happens in other countries, usually we see that there is a higher engagement and a higher relationship with families during early childhood education, but it goes down when the kids get older. Some federal programs, such Bolsa Familia, that is a program that provides a monthly payment for low-income families. This program demands that the kids are attending schools. So because of that, the schools and the families usually have to talk, to think about attendance, to think about to talk about what's happening with the kids, so that the family can have the benefit that they want to get from the government. We have low dropout rates here in Brazil, but they are still present, and we need to look at them, and they increase around 15 years. Most kids at this age leave schools because they need to work to support their family. So there is a family demand for the kids to help the family working and not studying. So there are other federal programs to rethink the schools around this age. There is a program called Schools for the Teenagers, and also there is a program called Pé de Meia that provides payment for young students that attend high school. Students from low-income families as well, if they attend the high school, they get paid by the government. So it's a way that the government found to help these kids, so they don't have to work and they can stay at the school. But as I said, each school can decide what to do regarding the family and the community engagement. So we have all kinds of situations, but we have some schools that stand out and that use the family and the community engagement as a way to have the kids learning more and learning better in a more significant way. And so we have good results in these schools. And I believe that we can also use these examples to think about how working closely with the families can be a good practice for every school, not only for the schools that are that we need to highlight right now.
Thank you, Analicia, and for highlighting the importance of families there in theory and in the policy, but it's really up to the schools to implement family engagement. So thank you so much. And now handing to Colombia and Carolina to speak a little bit about family engagement there.
Gracias, Emily. En Colombia, la participación de las familias, la escuela y la comunidad está reconocida.
Thank you, Emily. So the participation of families in school is very well known as a central role here. In Colombia, we have a bill, a law that establishes the full participation of family in school. And this decree defines the main responsibilities to guarantee, to ensure that family will participate in education, both formal and informal education. And this is complemented with Law 2520 that that makes all schools to implement programs for mothers, for parents and educators, so that they can strengthen their abilities and promote a co-responsibility between school and family for the wellness of boys and girls. And in practice, these institutions have multiple mechanisms of participation and governance. And among them, we have the Directive Council, that is the highest level representative that families also participate actively in decision making. And the other instance that we have is a school living committee that is mandatory for families to participate, and they are in charge of making decisions for cases of bullying, intimidations, or violation of rights. We also have mothers and fathers in that council. And the third instance that I was going to mention is the parents an administration committee that is part of the government plan that wants to strengthen this responsibility between family and school. And we also have our educational policies that promote a significant participation in school life and includes the collaboration in community activities, the support of homeschooling beyond schools, and family schools that help with dialogue, a collaborative construction between parents, teachers, and coordinators. So this participation is more understood as an assistance and without a co-responsibility that is active between school, family, and communities for the development of protection and learning of these kids and teenagers. So we do have this legal framework here that was very well thought to have this engagement, but we obviously need more participation.
Just joining the interpretation, you can listen in English, Spanish, or Portuguese by indicating the interpretation globe below. And just to note what Carolina said is there is a very advanced legal framework for family engagement in Colombia, one of the most notable globally, but the challenge of getting that to operate in schools and ensuring that in practice that there's deep partnerships with families is one of the challenges that Red Pepa and colleagues have been working with the schools on. So now I'm handing to CEO Pakra to give the context of family engagement in Sierra Leone. If you can unmute, CEO.
Oh, apologies. I thought I was already unmuted. Traditionally in Sierra Leone, families have not really had much power in schools, with the exception of some of the fee-paying private schools. But however, there has been a shift from that power imbalance in this regard with a number of initiatives in the last few years, in part due to the low levels of literacy and education among many parents and families, and also due to the low level of family involvement in school affairs as a result of frequent requests for money. Families have felt estranged from the education process and have been excluded from decisions about their own children's education. But to alleviate this, what we've done, there is a policy brief that is helping the ministry and education partners to work on involving and engaging parents and families much more respectfully and giving their voice a much higher priority. In most schools now, there is a community teachers association which has moved or shifted from the traditional parent-teacher association, which purely involved teachers and just the parents at the time. But now we have the community members and the teachers and the other members of the parent group to be part of a committee to oversee the affairs of their children's education in schools. And lately, these CTAs, as we call them, that is the Community Teacher Associations, usually hold timely meetings now to discuss issues pertinent to the education of their children. So that's where we are at this point. Thank you very much.
Thank you, CEO. And just to highlight how important families are in the radical inclusion policy in terms of partnering with schools, making sure kids are in school, but how challenging that is to build deep partnerships with what the CEO was mentioning with education levels and literacy levels of families. Now we're going to look at some of the findings and some of the recommendations that each of your teams have been looking at and working together to implement in your context. So we're going to start with Brazil and Analicia to say a little bit about what you've been doing and the key findings from the policy research that resonated most with you and your team.
Thank you. Well, we have a community, as Emily said in the beginning, called Conectando Saberes. And inside this community, we have a group of teachers and pedagogical coordinators that have been discussing the challenges, the learnings, and how they are dealing with family and community engagement. And what we focus in this group is to help teachers and educators in general to share good practice and to learn from each other. And what we've been seeing with them is that one major aspect regarding this subject in Brazil is that the teachers are not prepared and do not have support to deal with family engagement. Many teachers tell us that the day that they have a meeting with the families is a day that they fear a lot. They don't know how to do it. They don't know where to start. And usually they have a lot of problems in these days and in these situations where they have to be with the families. So it's important to think about professional development and good practice that they can share with each other and that they can follow in the moments that they need to engage the families. They need or they want to engage the families, so it can be part of their routine and not only a special day when families are at the school. Also, the sixth lesson tells about changing the structure of power. And we have seen that schools that invest in a more democratic management of the school are a good example of that. Here in Brazil, we have regulations and laws that tell the schools that they can have a democratic approach. And one example of this, of a school that works like this, is the school Adolfina in Novo Hamburgo, in the south region of Brazil, and they have students and families as part of the decisions that the school have to do. Even the families and the students help to decide how the money that the school gets is going to be used, what are the priorities. So it helps all the students and their families to understand that they are an important part of that school, and to also have a stronger relationship not only with teachers but also with the principal and the coordinator of the school. And the school has achieved very good results, learning results as well, working closely to the community and the families. So we believe that this kind of example can be shared for other teachers and principals and coordinators, so they can understand how to do it and they can start doing it in their own schools.
Alicia, and for elevating how important it is that teachers and school staff have training and support on how to partner with families. We know that few education systems around the world have comprehensive professional development of incoming educators as well as current educators on that, and how important that is, and how Nova Escola is partnering to make that happen, as well as I'll note Fundação Itaú that has also been developing an open course for training in Brazil for educators. So I'm going to move now to CEO Pakra to talk a little bit about Sierra Leone and what you've been implementing there.
Right. Thank you very much again. Here in Sierra Leone, through some research undertaken by Brookings Institution, in partnership with Educate Sierra Leone and Rising Academies, and a policy brief entitled Building Partnerships Where Families, Schools, and Communities Stand Together in Sierra Leone. A few important recommendations have emerged, such as one, strengthening and expanding the ways families and communities support their children's learning at home and create more two-way communication with schools. This means encouraging families not just to support learning at home, but also to engage in ongoing dialogue with educators and school staff. The second point is decouple family, school, and community engagement efforts from financial requests and make school finances more transparent. Families consider the expectation to contribute financially at every interaction as a major barrier. So reducing reliance on these contributions and being clear about how funds are used will help. And thirdly, make school management committees, like we just mentioned, SMCs, more inclusive, effective, and accountable to families, especially marginalized families. SMCs, that is school management committees, currently vary greatly in inclusivity and transparency. And strengthening these committees will actually promote greater participation and trust from all family groups. Now, what most resonates with me has been the breaking down of barriers and finding ways of reaching out to these families most often excluded from the conversation, which brings us to the radical inclusion policy that focuses on bringing all children into school. In the same spirit, this government endeavors to bring all families into the school and education conversation. We deem the parents to be experts on their own children, so schools and teachers must learn to treat them as such. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And we're at the time that we're going to move to some of the audience questions. So you'll hear from some of the recommendations that are being implemented alongside some of the questions from the audience. So I'm going to start with asking Carolina to answer the question. There's two questions from the audience. So thank you to Paula, who asked the question of how can we support families through different stages of children's and young people's development? And to Sabine, who asked how can schools engage working parents as partners in the education process? And so, Carolina, I'm going to hand to you to talk a little bit about the work that you're doing with the Escuela de Padres and to help elevate families from working families, as well as ensuring that there's deep partnerships in the schools. So handing to you.
Gracias, Emily. Desde Red Papás, durante más de 20
Muito
años,
obrigada, Emily. Thank you so much, Emily. So for many years, we were building tools with different stages of development to provide a support for educational systems. And here in Colombia, many of the times they don't have the resources. And so we have a series of support programs to education institutions so that they can use the resources and content to be able to support these families. And it's very important that the support team to education institutions understand that parents get involved in different ways according to the moment of the age of these children. And how can we help these different stages, how to strengthen that family commitment? Just a few ideas that we've had with some institutions here were to create a continuous ongoing learning process with the families, and many of the times to be very well structured, but also conversation spaces that are more informal. We have also been working on strengthening the capacities for those that help kids and teenagers on their day-to-day lives, and also their families that have a higher level of vulnerability.
Lina, just to Escuela de Padres is a very interesting effort from the government policy side of things, and how the Red Papa is working together with schools to ensure that these regular meetings that happen 3+ times a year are really bringing families in to center the needs of families, listening to families, and doing more to partner with families in this process. So thank you, Carolina, for elevating that and the work that they're doing to also center and understanding the perspectives of working families and the challenges of them being engaged in school, and how do they build partnership that centers those experiences of families. I'm going to hand now to Mahmoud to speak a little bit about what you're doing. There was an audience question from Elisa, so thanks, Elisa, for your question of how we can engage ministries of education to integrate metrics around family-centered systems. So if you could speak a little bit about the work that you have been doing with bringing schools and families together to do school planning and the tools that you're using to do that.
Thank you for the audience question. To engage the Ministry of Education, first we need to foster collaborative partnerships. So this is not about a single organization making a demand. We must form a powerful coalition of NGOs, civil society, parents, and community leaders. This unified front will then approach the Ministry of Education and primary and mass education, as we have two different ministries. So we can pressure them with a single voice, so to co-create a vision for what family engagement looks like in our schools. And second, we must provide evidence-based advocacy. We have to show them the data. We must present compelling research that proves when families are engaged, student outcomes improve dramatically with better attendance, higher academic achievement, and lower dropout rates. We can showcase successful local pilot projects and international case studies to demonstrate that this approach is not just an idea, it works. And finally, our proposals must focus on practical policy and system integration. This means working with the ministries to develop a specific dedicated framework for family engagement within our national education policy. It means modernizing our monitoring and evaluation systems to track family participation as a key indicator of a school's success. And it means building two-way communication channel between schools and homes. So by taking these steps, we can move beyond simply telling ministries what to do and instead partner with them to build a more inclusive, effective, and truly family-centered education system for all of Bangladesh children. Thank you.
Thank you, Mamoon. And just again, mentioning that they have been using in Bangladesh the Global Family School Community Engagement Rubrics. That is a tool that was created by the Family Engagement and Education Network that is helping bring families and educators together to work on school planning. So thank you so much. And for those of you, I see a couple of questions in the chat that these policy findings and all the recommendations that you're hearing about today, you can find these on our website, and we'll include links in a follow-up email after this call. We are reaching the end of our panel today. So I wanted to thank you all for joining and for sharing this day with us and thinking about family-centered education systems. And I think you have heard from our four panelists the innovative work that they are doing in bringing families in, from school decision-making and co-planning to ensuring that families' needs are centered, to thinking about professional development and how to support teachers and community of practices, to ensuring that families that have not been to school are also seen and heard and partnered with, as was shared today. So thank you to these colleagues for elevating that, and please check out the work that they've been doing and the partnerships and the policies and the findings in our policy reports. And I'm going to hand now to Richa to give us a final closing.
Thank you, Emily, and thank you to our panel, and thank you to all of you for joining us today. It really does take strong partnerships between education leaders, family leaders, students, community representatives to champion family-centered education systems. Today, we heard from our esteemed panel and education leaders from 4 countries on how they are championing these efforts to bring all of the people and parts of the education system together around this common purpose. As Emily said, please do check out and share our policy brief series, which has been published on our website. Join us for one of the interactive workshops that is being led by these wonderful teams over today and tomorrow. And please keep in touch with us as we launch into our next phase of research on relational trust, with strategies of how to support all families to feel like they belong in schools and have true partnerships with educators. As the educator in Kazakhstan rightly said, we need a bridge to help students navigate through this river with the help of both family and school. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.